All right, guys, today we're going to be looking at a problem where you get this Check XM Receivr error. And it's just going to cycle around between loading XM and no XM signal or Check XM Receivr. So this is typically a hardware problem. So let's take a look at a couple of things that you can look at for that. So guys, if we check the owner's manual real quick for this Cobalt, we can see that this particular error message indicates it's most likely a hardware fault. And, you know, that's kind of what I'm suspecting, but just kind of showing you it's a message that you would see if you have a problem. So let's go ahead to the first thing you can try to get around this. All right, guys, so you want to access the panel here on the passenger side. There's a clip here. There's a clip here. There's a clip up on the top. And then there's two tabs. You just lift and wiggle it out. You just don't want to break those. And if we take a look at the diagram here, we can find that there is a fuse specific to the XM receiver. It's also for the OnStar unit too, number 24. And you can try pulling that. I've already tried that and that did not clear the error, but you can give that a shot before going on to something more involved, which is what we're going to do now. We're going to go in the back seat and open up the rear cargo shelf so we can access the receiver. All right, guys, one thing in the trunk first. We're going to need to put the two seats down in order to do the work we need to access the rear package shelf. Just remember that you've got these two levers here that you need to pull in order to lower the rear seats down. So just, you know, get a helper, have them pull the seat while you pull the release latch, and those seats will fold right down. All right, guys, in order to access the XM receiver, it's actually sitting under the rear package shelf in between the two rear speakers. And this is a sedan, but the approach for the coupe is not much different, really just a little bit of a difference on removing this piece. Some older Cobalts might have a bolt holding this instead of just clips. But the first thing we're going to do, and I'll show the driver's side, and the passenger side is just the mirror. I'm not going to show both sides. So the first thing you're going to do is we're going to remove this clip with a trim removal tool. It's just one of these push-in kind of clips. What that's going to let us do is this piece here, we'll be able to hinge move out of the way. We'll use the same tool to remove the cover for this headrest piece. And then there's a couple of 10mm bolts. I think they're 10s. No, they're 13s. So a couple of 13mm bolts. We're going to remove these two 13mm bolts so that we can remove the headrest. All right, guys, just another angle here to show you. So once you get to this point, you can pull this guy out, set him to the side a little bit. There's a couple of clips in the back. I forgot to show that. Squeezing them, I'll show you when we put it back in where they are and what they look like. But once you undo those back clips and do all of this, you'll be able to lift this guy up enough to see under here. And that's our XM receiver right there. And the only thing holding it on is that 10mm bolt right there. You take that 10mm bolt off, and there's a couple of connections we'll be able to access. And it's sitting on a bracket that just slides in. So I'm going to take that 10mm bolt out, and I'm just going to slide it to the right in this view, and then pull it where I can disconnect it. So we'll come back after I get that. Guys, you know, I decided it's just really more convenient if I go ahead and take this last piece of trim out. Other than the little clip at the top that we already pulled, there's one more right here. Let me see if I can get you a flashlight so you can clearly see what I'm talking about. If we look down in here, you can see this bracket right here where I've got the yellow trim tool, and that is the last clip that's holding this guy on. I'm not going to be able to hold that in there and do it at the same time, but you can see, you know, there it is right there. Once you get that last clip out of the way, then it just kind of is a slide fit into the bottom piece. You can see there's a tab that fits into this notch. You just work it out after that. Just be careful as you bring it out that you don't damage the weather stripping, and that will remove the whole piece. And you can just kind of let it, you know, sit over to the side of the vehicle like so. And then with this out of the way, I think we'll just be able to take this whole package shelf out, because I really didn't need it to get here myself, but there's no way for you guys to see what I'm doing, so I might as well just do the extra steps so you can see it. All right, guys, so with that trim piece removed, we can just pull this the rest of the way out. And you guys can get a much better view onto this guy. I already took that 10mm bolt off. And on the side here, there's a antenna clip. I don't know if you can see that okay. But all we're going to do to remove that is just give it a pinch on top. It comes right off. And then there's the standard kind of push the clip down Delphi clip that holds the whole thing on, and that's it. And we can pull this guy off. So now let me show you how we're going to fix it. All right, guys, we got this out, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove it from the bracket that it's on. So it looks like that is going to be a, if I can read here, an 8mm. So we'll pop these three 8mm nuts off, and we'll separate the digital radio receiver, sometimes called an S-band receiver, from this Cobalt specific mounting bracket. After we get it separated from the mounting bracket, we're going to need to open it up. Now that's going to either be a 3/16 or this 5, I think will fit in a pinch. It's not exact, but it's close enough. And we'll take these 4 bolts off so that we can open up the case and reveal the circuit board that's inside. Now I'll link up in the top here pretty soon. I'll link up in the top here an earlier video I did for the Cavalier. And the problem is you can't just swap one of these salvage yard units in because it'll end up being locked. When you first set them up, they're programmed one time with the VIN. Maybe that is a little bit too big for that. You'll program one time with the VIN, and a Tech 2 or an MDI or those kind of tools are not going to be able to reprogram it. It's just how GM decided they wanted to do this. So the only way we're going to be able to use something that's not brand new, I'm just going to go ahead and go with this 3/16 one after all. The only thing is to come in here and swap the EEPROMs. We could also probably read the EEPROM, but once we get this open, you'll see this is a lot harder on this series of XM receiver than it was for the earlier ones on the video I've linked up at the top right, because they changed the type of EEPROM that they use. And these nuts are in there, these bolts rather, and they're super torqued for some reason. Not sure why. It's just sheet metal here. All right, so once those are all out, you can wiggle this top off. And there's our circuit board. Now the problem, and the reason that we have to go through and do it this way, is you can see earlier in the board, if you zoom in on this area right here, you know, really close, you can see there used to be an 8-pin SOA 8 type, you know, SOIC 8, SOP 8, whatever type of jargon you want to use for the device packaging that fit here. And they don't use this anymore. Instead, they switched over to this tiny SOT 23-5 package. So you can see it's got 3 pins on one side and 2 on the other. And you're just not going to be able to find a test clip or anything to fit this type of device. You're going to have to remove it from the board. So if I got to remove it from the board, I wouldn't even bother trying to program it, because I'd have to have a special holder for this, or I'd have to solder wires on it and program it that way. It's a standard 24C, actually a 24LC series EEPROM. Probably a 24LC64 or something a little smaller than that. We'll find out when we take a look at it. But that's what we're going to end up doing. We're going to end up taking this donor unit that we pulled from a salvage yard. As you can see, it's the exact same part number, which is something I always recommend when you try to do something like this. 152-68-996. Our original one was made on August 5th, 2008, and this one was made on September 17th, 2008. They're both out of a 2009 Cobalt. I even made sure they came out of the exact same type. You know, this is an LS, so it came out of another LS. It probably doesn't matter whether it's an LS or an LT or anything like that, but I do recommend you try to get the exact same number. Now this is, the way we're going to go about this is this salvage yard route, because it only cost me 20 bucks for this replacement, and it's only costing me the time, and I've got the skills and tools to do this kind of repair, and I'm sharing it with you so that you can do it too. But you could also buy a new one, and if you buy a new one, I'll roll the part number at the bottom of what the current one is. That'll set you back, I don't know, probably about $150 to $200, and you'll need a Tech 2 scan tool with a candy module to do the setup. So if you have that scan tool and you're okay buying something new like that, then you can just plug it in and run the scan tool and set it up that way. But we're going to go this way. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take this replacement one and I'm just going to plug it into the harness we have on the car to show you how you end up with that XM lock error, just so you can understand that if you just grab something out of the salvage yard and plug it in, it's not going to work as is. So let me go show you that and then we'll get back to here. All right, guys, I'm going to turn the radio on after plugging this guy in, and you see what you get is XM theft locked. Right, so that's because we've taken an XM receiver out of a different car, and GM doesn't want you doing that, and they didn't want to let the dealers do it, so they don't allow the Tech 2 tool to clear this. So the only way to clear this problem is at the EEPROM level that I'm going to show you. So let's go ahead and go back and disconnect this and get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and take that chip that's labeled M400 off of this original board. I'm going to use a product called Chip Quick. This is what I like to use to get all these surface-mounted chips off. It's really fast, and it's a lot easier for me than using a heat gun or something like that. It basically combines a very low temperature alloy with the alloy that was originally used to solder this on, and contaminates it, and that contamination lowers the melting point for the whole thing, so we'll be able to take it off very quick and very easily. I'm going to be using a exhaust extractor here, so you might hear some background noise, but other than that, it's going to be pretty straightforward, and I'm going to let you guys watch through the microscope while I remove the chip. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be applying some flux to this chip that we're going to be removing. And I like to be super generous with this. And then I'm going to get a piece of our alloy out. And I'm going to take just a regular soldering gun, or soldering iron rather, and we're going to melt that in. Turn our extractor on, and let's go ahead and get started. You're going to want to lower back down to this guy. I want to make sure I got him in view for you. So basically what this is, you just want to get this all contaminated on here on this side, and then we're going to go do the same thing on the other side. And you can see right there, this chip is already removed in a matter of seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the original one, and then I'm going to swap them, and then we'll go try it on the car. All right, guys, we've plugged this guy in. We got our key on accessory, and that's okay because we got a PAL unit. And there we go, XM preview. That is what I wanted. And we've got any other channels we want to scroll through there. So this particular one, there's not a subscription on it. I was just trying to get rid of that error message. It's been on here for, gosh, probably 6 or 7 months. And we finally fixed that. So let me go in the back before we button it up and show you what we got. All right, so all I did is after I soldered that chip on from the original unit onto this salvage yard unit, I cleaned that up with some alcohol and dried it out, and just plugged it in just like this to do a test and make sure everything was good, because I didn't want to take a chance that maybe the problem was in the harness, or it could have even been a problem with the antenna on the roof. Although usually with the antenna ones, it gives you the no XM signal error, and it will sometimes throw a code on that you could pull up with the Tech 2 that tells you it's having an antenna problem. It didn't have any codes when I checked this with the Tech 2, so I was pretty sure it was the actual receiver itself. So now we're going to put this all back together. I'm not going to show anything other than these clips. So remember I told you down here on the back of this cargo cover, this shelf, package shelf, there were these two clips that fit into slots in the back sheet metal in the back here. And you have to give them a squeeze to get this out. And you got to be really careful because this is obviously just cardboard and it can easily break. I'll show you popping these back in since I did not show you popping them out. And we'll come back when we're ready to do that. All right, guys, this is that clip on the back I was telling you about. Again, there are two of them. This is the one, this happens to be the one we're showing here on the passenger side. So you can see when you want to release this clip, you're just going to give it a little squeeze so the tab moves off of the sheet metal so that it can come up through the hole. And that's all you need to do to release this. All right, guys, there's just one last thing I wanted to show you here. I went ahead and took the EEPROM out of the donor unit that we didn't use, and I hooked it up on one of my little adapters here so that we can read it. Right, so this is a little adapter where you can take an SOT23 type chip, place it in there, and then I've wired it over to a DIP8 type that I can, so they can read it in as just a regular EEPROM in that type of packaging. And this guy turns out to actually read in as a 24 LC08. So nothing really amazing or interesting in there. So it's just a replacement for the 24 C08 that they were using in an 8-pin. And if we take a look at the data sheet I printed out here, we can see the difference in the pinout so that we can make an adapter like I've done here. So you got the 5 pins on the SOC 23.5 that we see right here. And then we can see how that compares over to the 8-pin to the left of it right there. And so after hooking it up on this and selecting it to read as an 08, I've just pulled it up on here using AS Programmer. And nothing really unusual to show here. At the bottom is where the VIN would appear on the last 6 digits of the VIN. If you look at the previous video that I mentioned for the Cavaliers and some of the other earlier era XM receivers, that's the kind of the same kind of format they have there. And then if I just look past the camera here enough to grab this slider, up at the top here, we can see information that you would find that would map over to what's on the front of the radio cover. The DX8996M, for example, would translate over for the radio serial number for the digital radio receiver itself. So I hope this extra information helps you out and shows you how you might go about if you don't have an opportunity to swap the EEPROM and you actually have to overwrite it. This is what you can do. You can pull it up and then just write your VIN in there and then drop it back in and you'll get to the same place I did with the swap. Anyway, I hope this helps you out, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you like these kind of videos, please like and subscribe, and I'll continue to make more for you. Thanks for watching.